that scene from Dirty Grandpa.
Oh, great movie.
We love crack.
Yeah.
We love crack.
Bad Grandpa, dude. Yeah.
Oh, this eating pad feels good.
Well, here we are. We're podding in Red Bluff. What do you think of Red Bluff?
I already tell you that I don't like this passing the mic. But Red Bluff it's nice, it's quaint, it's it's like like I like the nice rural towns. Unfortunately, it is still located in California, which comes with quite a bit of homeless. And I know I always say the most outrageous things on the channel, so I'll just leave it at that and I won't comment about my feelings about them. But other than that, it's a very cute... You don't have to give my long spiel in the beginning. Yeah. I really talk a lot. It's a nice, quaint town, which I do enjoy more than the city life. I'm not a city life person. I already heard about catching raccoons out of blankets, which sounds right up my alley. I want to go shake a raccoon out of a tree and catch it in a tarp.
Do the mic pass. I like this mic pass. So I saw someone else do it, and it made me want to do it. But we got Paige and Tate on the pod. We don't normally do guests either, so this is exciting. How does it feel to have us up here?
It's pretty fun.
Yeah.
Trying to work this. It is awkward. I don't think I like it. No,
We're committed. We're committed. We're going to do it.
Not really. We can set it down at any point.
No, we can put it on a straw. We got to do it.
Yeah, just put it on my drink.
Yeah.
Trying to fit this in our schedules was not easy, but we finally pulled it off. So that part's good.
I wanted to talk right there and I couldn't talk.
Do you want to restart and we'll put an arrow in between us so we can do that with the mic?
I feel like it's just better. I don't.
Do you want to? Okay, we
could
do that.
What if we just do this? Is that
it'll be good enough, yeah.
I think over here it's fine.
It'll be fine, yeah.
Just a little.
All right. Not the smoothest start to a pod, but
they never are.
But it's been fun. Yes, the scheduling was a disaster. There's no question. Because your schedule and my schedule, all of our schedules are equally messed up in different ways. So I think we first started talking about this right
months and months ago.
Yeah, it was.
It was right after I went on Cam's podcast is when it took off that we were going to do it, and that was in October.
Yeah, it's been that long.
Yeah.
I think we all live in the dysfunction.
Yeah.
We thrive on the dysfunction.
Pretty much.
Yeah.
Especially her.
Which is why I think that we're an interesting group to talk, because you two, plus me, and Brianna as my employee, essentially, we all work in archery and hunting, and you probably have for the longest with working in a shop and all the different stuff.
Yeah, quite a while.
And now you've done 3 different roles. I've really only done one as the resident influencer, and then we got the professional. So you've done shop, pro, rep, right? Essentially,
Yeah.
Am I missing any?
No, it's cool to be able to see all sides of the industry, from being behind the counter, working with the guys that come in that are doing the things that we love to do every day out there, shooting their bows, going hunting, things like that, working on bows, teaching people things, making people more proficient in shooting a bow and things like that. And then being able to travel the world, which I've been to so many places now that I would have never expected ever to go to. I would have never went to China or Thailand or a lot of the parts in Europe I've been to, South America. I probably would have went to Canada and that's about it. Maybe to go hunting or fishing or something like that. But outside of North America, really no desire to go anywhere else. And then archery has let me go places and experience things that I would have never got to do otherwise. So that's really cool. Met a lot of really cool people through archery that obviously would have never met otherwise. So that's kind of created some lifelong friendships, which are really cool to look back on. And
transitioning to repping.
And then being able to transition to the rep life, it's now I get to see that side of the industry, selling a little bit more on the back side of the company side of things, with building product and talking through and be sitting in a meeting with a bunch of guys and hey, what do we want to bring to the table for the consumers for the following year, rather than just being stuck with whatever those guys in that room created before me. Now I can be part of that process. So that's cool. And then also knowing the day-to-day struggles that the shop owners and employees deal with on a day-to-day basis. I think that makes my job a little bit easier, because I already know what they go through and kind of how the shop side of things work, being able to help them make their life easier now.
You relate to them.
Yeah,
where
it's a lot
if you've
easier.
never done it before, it's hard to.
Yeah, that makes sense. So, of the 3 jobs that you've kind of done, like the 3 main ones, which would you say is your favorite role? Is it being the shooter? Is it being the shop guy? Or is it rep? Or kind of each one there was something that you liked the best and worst? But I guess overall, which would be your favorite?
I think if you'd have asked me this at 3 different points, I probably would say 3 different answers.
Yeah.
I still really enjoy, like, when I'll go back to Montana every now and then and help my parents out at the shop. Like, they went to Africa and hunted for a week together and left me at home, so that was cool.
Yeah.
So it's like that family dinner that you didn't get invited to, then everybody comes back to from dinner with like this amazing story about how good the food and dessert was, and it's like,
We had a good time.
oh, that's cool.
Right.
You know,
while
but
we ran the shop.
no, it was good. Like, I still enjoy going back and like working at the shop and like things like that, but I enjoy what I do more now because it's a little bit more flexible, a little bit more freedom.
What would your least favorite be?
Now, shooting.
Yeah.
If you'd asked me 5 years ago, I loved the shooting.
Yeah.
But now it's like,
Did you though?
I did up to like COVID, realistically, because then it was like when the COVID era time frame was, we really didn't shoot for, what was it, probably like 5 months, 6 months, where there really wasn't any shoots. And then it's like, wow, there is other things to life than shooting a bow every single day nonstop.
Yeah.
We went to the lake, we got to go fishing, like got to do actual like normal everyday life things that
We never
got to do before. So I think that's kind of the time frame where it was like archery kind of like started to lose. I started to lose a little bit of interest, lose that like spark, desire, things like that. I mean, and then nowadays, like if you're not legitly perfect, I mean, the Vegas shoot this last weekend
Everyone's so
proved
good.
it. Like, you literally cannot miss anymore. So you could go out and have the best weekend of your life, shoot the best score, and not even cut a paycheck.
Yeah.
So like that's the hard part is with target archery now is like everybody's so good and the equipment has gotten so good and the access to knowledge has gotten so easy with YouTube, social media, things like that. And everybody's way more open to the knowledge base now than they used to be. Like 10, 15 years ago, it was like you had 2 or 3 guys that knew everything. And they were
And
really
they
secretive
didn't
and they held
share.
on to that.
At all.
Because that was like their cheat code, right?
Yeah.
Now
I mean,
everybody shares
that was
the
their
cheat code.
advantage
Right.
over the other competitors.
Dude, I mean, you see that with hunting too, or really any sport, but sports that we relate to, archery, but especially in hunting, the access to information, just with the internet becoming more prevalent. Like, it used to be such a tall task to go out of state and try to hunt a new state when I was like a kid. My dad and I would do that. You'd have to go dig out maps, learn where the public land was, like learn the regs.
Now you just open your app and like
Yeah, like
you
Onyx,
set your
Go Hunt,
settings
like,
to, you know,
so
okay, I
many
want to see the
different
private
things.
lands. I want to know what's like wildlife management, what's a BLM area, like,
It
you know,
just shows you.
what
Quick
where
easy.
water is, where fires are, like, so you can have an idea of like, oh well, you know,
And you
this
can
might
do live
have this much
imagery now.
population. Yeah.
So you can literally go and click on it and request a download and request a live image before you even step foot on that piece of dirt.
Yeah.
And know exactly what it looks like.
Yeah.
Oh, is this water hole dry this year compared to what it was last year? Things like that. I mean, back in the day, it was just Eastman's.
Yeah, exactly.
So like you had to
Yep.
know, like you had to know what to read.
Yep.
And then know where to like connect the dots. Now it's like press one button and it's at your fingertips.
It's become a lot easier to have knowledge, which isn't a bad thing, but it makes it so more people have access to it.
Yes.
You know, and that's really it. And that makes total sense with the competition stuff. And that's interesting what you said about 2020 and like shooting less and then realizing like I don't have to shoot all the time. I think that's one really cool part about being like a content creator is I love to shoot obviously and do shoot a lot. But I don't need, like, sometimes I won't shoot for like 2 or 3 weeks, you know, not often, but like if I'm not filming anything and I have tons of videos lined up, we're just living life doing other stuff. Whereas as a competitor, it's like you can't really do that. Sure, you could,
Yeah,
but
we
your
do,
results,
but then you get your butt kicked and you suck.
For doing
and then
that.
you're behind, and then you have to work even harder, like between the next event or the next event to try to catch back up from the time that you lost. So it's pretty much like you don't slack because now everyone's so good you can't. And like a lot of the video stuff that I share, when I was coming up, like there wasn't the internet, there wasn't social media like that, and that was not part of our job at all, nor did we use it to learn information. So like, of course I had people like my parents and one of our local guys at the bow rack and stuff teaching me things, but like for the really like detailed stuff that I'll share, like trial and error. Like I just had to learn it myself. You just got to put the bow in the press and hope you don't blow it up. Like you just got to you know what I mean? Like work through those things and learn the hard way. So what I try to share is like, okay, through the time that I had to spend doing this because it's my full-time job, here's some quick, easy tests or things that you can do to save people that learning curve and save them that time. Because the average dude working a 9 to 5 doesn't have the time to like do that kind of stuff. Like that is my 9 to 5,
Well,
you know?
it's, I think, so much safer for people to know how to do it themselves. Like, sure, yeah, the bow shops make more money if you're coming there to bring your stuff in. No one says you're going to stop bringing your stuff in, you know? Like, they're the paid expert for a reason. Or you hope your shop is or whatnot. Some people aren't lucky enough to have a great shop next to them. But if you're out there, whether it's in the field or even just at home, and like something kind of happens, you're like, and they're like, I'll just keep shooting, you know, because I can't
They're too
bring
scared
it
to
into the
fix
shop
it.
or whatever.
Yeah.
Yeah, if you could just know how to fix it yourself, it's so much safer than them blowing their bow up and wasting so much more money now to come back in to fix it, or hurting themselves by doing, like we saw a dude blow up his bow at a shoot, like standing right next to us, and like boom, like big black and blues down his arm like within seconds.
Yeah.
I'm like, just imagine if one piece like came and hit you in the eyeball.
Oh,
or
when they
whatever,
blow
you know?
up, like it can go sideways real quick. So that's the other, that is, I would say, almost a downfall though, is because if people are working on it but they don't really know what they're doing, sometimes it can get a little
They
dodgy.
don't take the time to really like know it efficiently.
Yeah, so there's good and bad to both of that, but it's different on the hunting side. I think people tinker a lot less. It's a lot less precise, you know, like you got a bigger area to hit. It's not like, you know, you miss this 1X and you lose 100 grand like tournaments. Yeah. So hunting, I'm way more like laid back and chill. But, you know, we talked about it earlier. All the stuff that I've learned on the target side, I transition over to the work that I do on my hunting bows, which I know makes them better. But really, I mean, if you want to be the top level at like any of this stuff, you got to know how to work on your own stuff. Like if you don't, you're going to get in a pickle.
I need to, yeah, I gotta go get the access to the information, and I'll get back to you on it, but I'll get one of my guys on it. Dude, it's crazy. Yeah, I should probably learn a couple things.
Probably,
you know,
just a little
yeah,
bit.
I probably should.
Maybe some,
I just like to perform.
which side
You know,
put the heavy.
yeah. So 3 of us are Bowtech. Yeah, well, you are too. We all are Bowtech people. All of us.
Yeah.
Tate's the newest.
Yep.
How's it been repping for Bowtech? Someone told me this back in the day, and I think it was true then, probably maybe true now, but maybe not as much. I knew a guy who switched from repping from one brand, switched to Bowtech, and his other buddy who stayed at the other bow brand was like, man, I'm so jealous he's switching to Bowtech. And I was like, why is that? And he's like, well, they're the easiest bows to sell to shops. That's what he told me at the time. And I was like, huh, why is that? And it was because of the tuning at the time. This was when they were like the only ones with deadlock. And then also he's like, and then they got Tight Spot and Black Gold and Ripcord. It's such a good conglomerate that's like really easy for shops to want to buy and tune them quickly and efficiently and get them out the door well for the customers. Would you say that's still the case? Or, I mean, I know brands have caught up in the tuning department, obviously.
Yeah, I would say the nice thing about all the brands that is under that, like the conglomerate umbrella, you know, with like Black Gold, Tight Spot, Ripcord, Bowtech, Diamond, Excalibur crossbows. Yeah, it's just it's a very versatile line, and all the lines are very well known by pretty much all the consumer base. Any kind of outdoor hunting person that is in archery has either heard of those brands before or has shot those brands before on various different bows or accessory wise. But I think now with the other lines catching up to the different, like the other companies, catching up with like the tuning things, like I still think we make the best tuning system out there, and it's still a very, very easy bow to sell. And that's one thing I hear all the time from my dealers is, man, I would love to sell a Bowtech to every single person that walks through the door because of how easy this bow is to tune. There's no hoops you got to jump through. You don't have to take it and put it in the press. There's no shims. You don't have to twist this, twist that. It's just a simple, you could literally just set everything up with an Allen wrench on your bow. I mean, you literally just did that in your last video.
Yeah.
You did the bow start to finish out of the box and never put the bow in the bow press, and you're shooting.
Yeah,
so,
and there was no clips in that video that, you know, got people hot and bothered either. It was just very run of the mill, very basic. God, that was, I did not expect that. Well, I did. To be honest, when we did.
comment on it after, like in mid filming, you did comment that you did that without an arrow, and that was dumb.
Well, let me tell you why.
That's not the worst part.
The reason, so well, I'll tell you. So let me tell you, the reason we didn't put an arrow in, I made that decision consciously. My thought was, okay, if he's already in my string as I'm holding this thing back,
Your stuff.
if he's up in there, the least of my problems is blowing up this bow. If I shoot this and take his finger off, I don't really give a shit about blowing up my bow.
Filming as well.
That was going to be my exact comment. When people were freaking out, I was like, it's not your bow. If he took your bow and drew it back without an arrow, like then you could act like that. If he blows it up, it's his own damn bow. He'll just go get another one. That's on him, right? Like, he'll figure it out.
It's Josh's.
It was his fingers that were the sketchy part.
I can't replace Josh's
He was
finger.
pretty trusting of you, actually.
Which,
Well,
and that's the case that it's like, you can comment all day long. Who cares? The whole point of it was doing it without the press, which you couldn't
should have done with
do
the
without
draw
the
board.
potential of losing your fingers.
Yeah.
Then whether the arrow is in it or not, like. Even if he has an arrow in it, if he lets it go forward, your fingers close it inside that string. Like
It's a lose-lose on either side. The finger or the bow.
Well,
so.
I think the finger's more important.
If we did it with a, afterwards I was like, we could have just put it in the draw board and done the same thing, you know?
Like, I think whether you're
But-
pressing it or not, like he wanted to use
Right.
no equipment, to except an Allen
show,
to set that bow up
I
to
think
prove that you can.
the archery industry is such a tough one
Yeah.
because we hound these general rules into people's head, right? Like, don't draw the bow back unless you want to shoot. Always have an arrow on the bow, blah, blah, blah. All this safety stuff. Those are entry-level things for people who don't know what they're doing, for people who are probably going to screw a few things up along the learning curve. Once you hit the level that we're at, and clearly what you guys are doing now, like, we do some...
4 in the room, maybe.
Well, still, I mean... we do some janky things to get by and whatever, but we know what we can get away with and what we can't. If the bow blows up, it's on us. Like, there's just stuff that it's hard because the internet sees that and goes crazy. And then the whole, don't teach people that. It's like, well, I commented on it. I defended you guys. And I was like, if you were hunting and your peep blew out, that wouldn't you, and you're like miles in the back country, like, do you want to hike all the way back out and go find a bow shop, or do you want to just put your peep in the woods and be done?
I don't know. I'm gonna grab that string and draw that bitch back with my foot
There you
and
go,
try to
yeah.
figure out a way to get that thing.
Like, we're gonna
back in
figure
there.
it
Like,
out.
I'll figure a way out.
So the comment, there was one comment that I think deserves a gold star that I saw on that whole shebang. One guy said, Josh trusting his fingers with the 20-year-old Carter is crazy. That's really the crazy part. It's not me holding the bow back.
Yes.
It's my release that's got
So-
a million shots through it.
We did look, and I'm like, oh, they probably use like a draw check tool, which the shops have this little metal hook, wrist strap thing, so you can't let go. And then we saw it was your release, and we were like, okay. Even for us, because we've broke a lot of releases, right? Like a lot. So I was like, that's pretty ballsy.
Yeah,
like
oh,
that's
yeah.
pretty ballsy.
Like,
Even
I
not
would trust
trusting
a
you, but
hinge more than I would trust a button.
Yes.
Because a hinge, you can just keep it cranked forward
Yeah.
and it's never going to go anywhere.
Yeah.
I mean, a button, like
things can happen.
Yeah, that was. It's funny, man. Like, that's such the case with making videos. You just never know what part is gonna like catch crazy steam.
Yeah.
Well, what's funny is like it truly, I think, is a little bit of brainwashing, that goes on because you're ingrained those rules in the beginning, like a kid in kindergarten is, and so it's just like without fail you see it and that's what your thought is, like, oh my god, you cringe at like somebody doing it. But yet we'll go out to like a fun shoot and like James will shoot my bow for an entire course. I'm like, you don't think that's a little dangerous? Like this 5'10", 6 foot man.
6 foot. 6 foot. Okay.
This 6 foot man, holding the 24.5-inch draw with his anchor up here, like literally nowhere near his face. Like, could you imagine if he let that arrow go and it just like whoop off to the side and shoot somebody in the back? Like, it's very possible.
Yeah.
Whoa, what? I'm not shooting nobody.
Well, no, because you're good and you're an expert, but like that's like to me just as dangerous. But you don't see those comments at all. You just think, oh my, you see, whoa, that's so funny, how crazy, like cool that you did that, whatever. But then if it's like those, basic things that are ingrained in your brain.
Yeah.
We see it and we automatically cringe. I'm like, we should
So-
be cringing at the thought of someone shooting a bow that is absolutely not set up for them whatsoever, but that's not, you don't
Yeah.
get those comments on them at all.
So for years, we used to partially draw the bow back. You can't do it now. Pretty much all the cams on the bows are momentary interruption.
So
I
doing
I need a
lives on Instagram or TikTok, if James is feeling too tired, it's so weird.
Dude,
If
Mike.
James is feeling too tired before going on a live, he will literally go to the store and get himself some lollipops, as Dan calls them, just to wake himself up. He'll have a couple before it starts, and then he'll drink them all through the
That would
live
put
because
me
it
to
wakes.
sleep.
Yeah, him. It's like
Yeah,
the
it gets the
Energizer
juices
Bunny. It gets
flowing.
him.
Plus
it gets him
those
going.
those tips on TikTok Live. I didn't realize how much money you could make on there. I did one live and made $100 off tips. And if I didn't have my lollipops ahead of time, I would have been boring and tired. I would have got no tip. It's like it's an investment, really at some points. But
Sure.
we had a little break, which was nice. I needed to get up, stretch the legs, have a LaCroix. But you, Tate, how long did you shoot like pro?
I started, I don't know, shoot, what was that? Like 2015 to 23. So 8-9 years, something like that, 8 or 9 years.
It's a good run.
Yeah.
So is that how you guys met on like the circuit?
That was going to
Yeah.
be one of my
Yeah.
questions. Was what is the story of the meeting? I was assuming it has to do
This
with
is actually a
archery.
good story if I get to tell
Oh,
the truth.
Tate's face got quiet.
Yep.
Like his
So-
facial features literally quieted down there.
I'll
It's
take
like
this one.
something's happening in the story.
So I was married, and he was
That
not.
might be part of it.
And I'm like the best wing woman. If you need a hookup, I'm your girl.
Oh, you two
Okay.
should go out together. You guys get
I
everybody
have-
married.
I'm great
No
at that.
shame.
I'm very good at that.
Yeah, no shame. So I
Yeah.
will make it happen. So I used to run his Tinder for him and would try to set him
For
up.
him?
Yep. And I would try to set him up with all my little archery friends. And I'd be like, oh, you're going to go hook up with Tate, or you're going to go hook up with Tate. So I was like kind of his little pimp for a while.
Oh my
Then
god! I love
my
it.
marriage was horrid and ended up getting divorced, thank God.
Mm-hmm.
And then I don't really know
So
how that
basically, just
happened.
changed the pimp contract. To
Yeah,
like,
I just kept
you know.
watching all these girls fail, and I was like, I think I can do that better. Here we are now.
What an iconic story.
Store tops ours all day long. That is an excellent story.
That is.
You know, from pimp to husband or pimp to wife. You know, like
Yeah.
you were basically the prostitute. She was your pimp,
Would
and then
you
she
like
just,
to add to any of that? That was pretty spot
That's
on.
pretty
right?
accurate.
Oh,
So did you ever, since you were Tate's pimp, sort of, did you ever have to backhand him and just keep that pimp hand strong, or what?
There was one time I was really annoyed. We like put together this whole date thing. We got him to ice cream, and we're like, "Here, go do your thing, guys." And Rio Wild and I are having ice cream, all happy. And yeah, I don't know, it just didn't work out. And
It was a
then
failure from the start.
I was like,
Took
really?
a lot of
coaxing.
coaxing.
Yeah.
I wasn't into it. I was just like, nah, I'm good.
This
So
is
the
great.
joke
your
is,
future wife was sitting there.
yeah,
You just, you know,
the joke is now,
Maybe
like
didn't
any
know
of
it
the
at the time.
bridesmaids that I would have, like at the wedding,
Have all
I
dated
tried to
your
hook up with him because they're all my friends.
That is good shit, dude.
well,
What
she
a
just wanted to make sure. It was kind of like, you know, when you got to like test out vehicles.
Yeah.
Like
I
she
got
had to have you
feedback.
test driven a few times
Yeah.
beforehand to make sure you were acceptable
Yeah.
for her. So she had your friends, you know, her friends take you out for a spin, and they came back and
Yeah.
reported to her, you know, like, it's a good ride. You should take it.
Oh my god. His pod's off. It's off the rails. I love it.
That's the wildest story. That's like if I handed my sister over to you and was like, Brittany, take him for a spin and let me know if I should marry him.
Yeah. Yeah, hey, if you want to, I mean, if that's what you need to do, you know, I mean.
I know, you won't, you know. You have
dude.
wondered.
What an insane story.
That is great.
I love
I'm very
it.
glad we asked that question.
This is going to make people more intrigued in target archery. They're like, I didn't know there was this kind of tea behind the scenes. This is
Basically,
great.
like, you go find
just-
husbands or just,
You just
one night
travel
stands.
around all
Just
these
depends
cool
on what you
places
want.
all the time together. Like,
What's that
you know.
show? What's that show about like Mormon wives? This is like
I think it's called Mormon
it's sort
Wives.
of a similar vibe, which is fun. Just
I have
lots
yet
of
to
tea
watch
and
that
drop.
show, but I saw one commercial for it and I was hooked. I was like, this is going to be wild. Apparently, it's not as interesting as it comes off to
Oh,
be.
really?
But it's about a bunch of like basically polygamous Mormons that like he's got multiple wives.
Love is Blind's fantastic. You guys ever seen that show?
No.
It's worth a watch. It's worth a watch.
no.
But okay, so
James loves all of like the reality TV love shows, and I had never watched a single one. Now it's like every night. Switch one. What? There's.
Do you
Love is
watch The
Blind.
Bachelor?
no, I never seen it. I did apply for it though back in the day.
I believe
Yeah,
you,
Absolutely,
actually.
I
I
did
think he's
apply.
applied to be on like every love show there is.
A couple for sure. I think if I was still in the game for a few more years, I would have got one, but I, didn't go on.
If the mullet was longer,
I know that's
I
the thing.
think
I don't.
that
think-
would have been the ticket.
I
Yeah.
think so too. I will say now that I've done it for a while, I'm not into holding the mics. I'm committed to it for this pod, but
We
I'm
don't
not
have
into
to
it.
be though.
No,
You
I'm
ever said
committed.
We could just put the
I
mic
can't.
Right
I can't
here.
give up on it. I'm committed.
But you could just put it down.
Yeah, it's just gonna be so quiet.
It's not.
So Paige, you've been pro for how many years?
Pro for 15. I've been full time on the circuit for 17.
That's a long time.
Yeah.
It's a long time.
What makes a so like golf? I just learned this. Like you get a pro card. Like
Yes.
if you, I don't know what you have to do to get it, but you get a pro card.
We have
like,
that too, but
you
it's
guys
kind of
have
a
pro
joke.
Cards?
Am I allowed to say that? We do. But yeah, you don't
Like,
have to be that
how
good
do you,
to get them.
Like, what's the qualification for a pro?
There's like a certain score you have to shoot, and another pro's supposed to back you, and there's a process, but it's kind of a
Actually,
joke.
like they're like
She's
actually good.
Yeah, they're actually good. But you don't really have to be good to get a pro card. So
wanna know what the
archery
number
is
is.
weird because there's like so many people that say, "Oh, I'm a pro, I'm a pro, I'm a pro,"
Mm-hmm.
but they could have made like $0 ever.
Yeah.
So to me, the way I like to
Straight
explain
pay to
it
play.
is
Yeah.
there's people use the word pro very loosely.
Mm-hmm.
I think there should be promotional staff and professional staff. And they
Yes.
kind of screw that up. Like professional to me means you're earning a living. Promotional is
you
like
live on the money that you
hey,
make.
yeah, promotional
Only
staff
shooting.
is what most people are, where it's like, here's some free stuff and here's this, you go promote it for us and we'll kick you
Yeah.
some equipment. And like, that's what the majority of it is. And so it's really hard to make that distinction because we can shoot in the same division. We have the same pro card. Everyone calls themselves a professional.
Is there actual physical card?
Yeah. Yes. Yeah. And it's so, here's what weird in archery too, right? Other than live, that's a whole other thing with golf, but it's basically the PGA. In archery, there's so many circuits. So we have NFAA, ASA, USA Archery, World Archery,
I forget about all
IBO,
this stuff.
and every organization has their own version of what that is. So you could be like a pro in ASA, and they do have pro cards, don't they, or not? I don't
You
know.
just pay the registration.
Basically, you just pay registration. You're a pro. Like NFAA,
No
we actually have a
way.
Yeah, if you
pro
wanted to be a
division.
pro in ASA or IBO
Like, you
or
could go do
whatever,
it
you
tomorrow.
You just
Sign up.
Pay your
pay to get registered as one.
$150 or whatever it is for your pro membership, and that's it.
So that's
Alright,
where
so you could go get
it's
a real
hard.
pro card. I'll go get an ASA pro card. We'll just
Yeah.
call ourselves pros.
There you
I
go.
bet you could go shoot the qualifying thing for NFAA today. Like it's. I was about to insult him. I was gonna say it's not hard.
Yeah. I did drop 4 nines, but I'm gonna try it after this pod. I'm not gonna drop any nines. I'm not going to. No way.
So
That is
yeah.
funny shit. I mean, it's so interesting, that 17 years is a long time. What would
been
you
a while.
say is like some of the changes for the better you've seen, and maybe like one for the worse that you think was maybe better
Changes
15
for the worse
years ago?
is social media.
Okay.
Yeah, which I mean I do it, right?
Yeah.
That's what we're here doing. But when I first started from a job perspective as a professional archer, really the only requirement was go be good and win tournaments. Like, yeah, go work the booths and talk to some people, but like nobody really felt like they knew you because they didn't know you. Because all they saw was you shooting on some shooting line. They saw you in a magazine, right? They saw you on a newsletter. Like it
It
wasn't
was on like a giant poster I saw on one of
Yeah.
like the social media images, like behind the target.
Yeah. So
And
that's
there's
what
just
it
this
used to be, just
ginormous
that.
picture of you, but that's all people used to see was like
Yes.
that.
And so now with social media, it's become a huge part of what our kind of job description is supposed to be. And it does take a lot of time and a lot of dedication, as you guys know. And it's different because you're still expected to go win tournaments, but on the same token, you're also expected to do this whole other side of it that, like, when I started, didn't even exist. And so that would be my negative.
Do it like it's also your full-time
like
job.
It's your full-time job, even though it's not. So there's that. I think things for the better. When I first started, there was not the depth, especially in the women's division. There was a few key, like, standout women who'd been good for years, and no one really ever challenged that. And so I kind of came in the first wave of, like, youngsters that, like, pushed those boundaries, and, like, we actually beat them, started pushing the scores higher and higher, and it was an interesting transition. Now there's so many women. Like, we just finished the Vegas this weekend, and there was 11 of us in a shoot-off at $8.99, so that's one out for the weekend. And that would never have happened 10 years ago. You know, like you would win the whole shoot with a score like that. There would be one person, you know, maybe one at a couple down, another at a couple down. Like, the depth wasn't there. And so with, I think, social media, also this would be a positive as well. So there's a negative side and a positive side both. But, like, now the information is there. People learn sooner. They can learn quicker, so they improve faster. Like, when I was young, they didn't have that good of equipment for kids. Now they do. So, like, I was shooting a broom handle stabilizer. Like, my dad would custom make strings at different lengths to change my draw lengths. Like, now in the diamond line, like, a kid can buy a bow, and it'll fit them from the time they're young until they're full grown, basically. And so the readily available equipment, knowledge, expertise, all of that stuff has made people better faster. Yeah. And so it's made it harder, like, way harder. You know, I didn't used to have to work that hard to win. Like, now you really genuinely do. I used to just think, okay, this was a fact, you can back me up on it. I'd be like, if I go shoot my best, I'm going to win. Like, I just knew that. Like, now I can shoot my best and not even make the podium because, like, everyone is so good. And so the depth has grown. We have more people shooting. They're getting better and better. So, like, on that side of it, you know, the social media has done a great job for the industry. If we don't have that, then we're not growing, right? So I do like it from that growth standpoint. And that's kind of how I approach my social media, is just informative, teaching people, helping people. Because, again, they don't have time to do all that testing and do all that stuff. And so I've got 17 years behind. So I started shooting when I was 2 also. So that would be almost 28 years ago now. I'll show you some pictures when we're done. Yeah, my parents, shooting, living around here, pushed me around in a stroller, stand me up, shoot, put me back in the stroller, and go to the next target. Like, it was ridiculous. So I don't ever remember not shooting a bow. And so I never planned on this being my job. We just traveled, shot for fun every weekend, like, hunted. That's, you know, what we did. And then when I was 10, I broke my first state record. And it came in the mail. We were like, whoa, that's cool. We didn't know there were records. And so we started researching that. We found USA Archery. We found World Archery. And, like, I would just go to a tournament, do well, and they'd be like, wow, you're really good. You should shoot this.
So is that, like, the point where your parents are like, oh, shoot, my kid, like...
I mean, I was always good, but we just didn't, like, we never even realized it could be a job, if that makes sense. Because it kind of couldn't also for women back then.
Yeah.
Like, they could do it, not to sound horrible, but most of them didn't make enough to live off of. They were living off their parents or living off their husbands or whatever. Like, they didn't make a real income. And so in the years, like, I've worked really hard trying to push that boundary to where it's like, if you're a young girl and you want to do this, now there's a difference. You have to have a value, right? And now winning tournaments doesn't carry as much value because there's working with people in the booth and there's social media. Like, you have to bring multiple things to the table to have equivalent value that winning used to hold 10 years ago. But I want there to be a place where obviously people can look at that and have a chance to make it their living. And so now it's more a reality than it's ever been before.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, all those changes make a lot of sense. I think in pretty much any sport, you're seeing a lot more pay increases for women's sports. Like, in basketball, you always hear the WNBA girls like, oh, a couple of them are like, oh, well, why does LeBron make $40 million a year and I make $750,000? Yeah. And obviously, it's like there's way more eyeballs on the men's sport, so of course it makes a difference. Ticket sales, revenue, but I do think it's good to see the gaps closing, and the interest in women's sports, and a lot of them, has increased a ton.
Yeah.
Like, you know, even WNBA is a prime example. They got a big star last year, and because of that, you actually see it on ESPN and different things, which is going to, over time, raise the revenue ship. So I think it's cool that you were kind of a part of that wave, actually.
People,
is dope.
From what we do, like, people like watching you because you guys are funny and fun. For us, they don't really care. They just want what's your knowledge, what's your secret, and give it to me, right? It's a
Yep.
whole different dynamic. And so with that, it's, I'm trying to think of how to say this nicely. It's different because of what people want out of you. And so like women who are influencers from like a standpoint where you guys come from can sell quite a bit of stuff. If you are a professional target archer and you don't know how to work on your own stuff as a woman, what value do you bring? If I walked up to someone, we're going to say you. If you're a pro archer and I walked up to you and I said, can you please explain to me like why you use this rest? How do you adjust it? How do you set it up? And why is it superior to this other rest? If I'm working a booth,
like, they look at that brochure like you're a fucking idiot.
if you can't answer that question, how do you sell those products? So
Yeah.
for years, none of the women ever worked on their own stuff. Their dads did, their husbands did, their boyfriends did. Like, and it was interesting because some of the women, you'd see them, they'd start dating a pro archer and they'd get so good because he'd start working on their equipment. They'd break up and then they'd tank because they didn't know anything. And so I realized that pretty young, and I was like, all right, I want to learn. Like, I want to do my own stuff. And so that has helped me like achieve contracts that make it possible to live off of archery. If I didn't put that effort in and I didn't learn how to work on my own stuff, I would have next to no value. And so it's different on our side of the industry for sure.
Yeah, I mean, I think it certainly shows, I think as the internet's blown up and stuff's become more accessible, both information-wise, but also, like, I guess viewership-wise, is obviously viewership and impressions are very, very important to brands. That's why companies will drop absurd money for a Super Bowl ad. It's because they know tons of eyeballs are on it. So for companies, it's easy to quantify. Like, if someone like me is like, hey, we got 36 million views on YouTube last year. It's like, okay, that has a lot of value because not many people are doing those kind of numbers. So then as a competitor, it's like, well, you have to spend time on being super talented, but if you can round yourself, I think, like you're saying, and build your brand. Okay, I am good, yes, but I also understand how to talk about stuff, and I get some viewership and impression. The more you can do that in
And then
anything,
because then there's eyes on you too, right?
exactly, all that stuff kind of combined just raises, the value.
Well, you're well-rounded is the best word for it, because like ultimately, what does a business want? They want to sell products, and so like you winning definitely helps say like, ooh, that like if
that
she can
product's
do it,
good.
that bow must be a pretty good bow. But if they can also add you and you can sit in the booth and you can explain the product and it makes sense in a way, like okay, now there's another way she can sell products, not just because she wins with the bow, but she can talk about the product. And okay, social media, she posts a lot and she gets viewership, so now I know on social media she's also going to sell our products. Like
If you want to
ultimately
make
they
it,
want to sell stuff.
if you want to make it as a professional target archer, you have to be well-rounded in today's market, especially as a woman. The men can get away with being a little bit less well-rounded because, again, they have more eyes, more viewership. Like, it's true. Like, we have like one of the best guys in the world. I'll throw him under the bus because I'm friends with him. I can't. His name's Mike. Like, he doesn't do a lot of social media, and I don't know how much he does in the booths, whatever. He's super nice. But, like, he just wins everything. Like, his nickname's Mr. Perfect. Like, he's really freaking good. As a woman, like, I went through and won everything for years. But, like, that's not enough. So we really do have to be more well-rounded. That is one of the differences in the industry if you want to make it.
Yeah.
Like, you can't just be good at shooting a bow anymore.
And I think like years ago, all of the product brands from all the different various brands out there in the industry like weren't at a level where they were all kind of equal back then. You would have like one bow brand that would come out with a bow, say 1 year, and it would be far superior to the rest. That bow, everybody knew that bow was like the best bow on the market, or this sight was the best sight on the market. This rest, arrow, stabilizer, release, blah blah blah, whatever it may be.
Back in the day, we all shot the same brands, more
And
or less.
then
There was no variation.
Whoever was winning with that product was like, wow, they're winning with that product. It must be the best. Where now there's so many different avenues and outlets to find information, and all the product from all the different brands has gotten to be such a high level quality equipment that it's really boils down to whatever your personal preference is now. So just going out and winning is not really sufficient anymore. Like, you have to be able to give a reason to why this is good. So that's where the knowledge plays into huge factors, I think.
The other thing with that too is you'll see people say, like on comments for us, when pros switch, well, they're a pro, they shoot so good, they can win with anything. Sure, that's probably true. Like, you take some of the top people and you put anything in their hands and they're probably going to win. What they don't see is which one is easier to win with. Does one take longer? Like, does one take double the amount of hours to get ready and prep and build and tune? and perform well with than something else. Like building arrows. Like, do I have to go through full sorting processes, or can I trust that they're good enough to just build them out the box? Like, so there are differences in that sense that really play in now, I think, you know?
I would agree with that.
But it's stuff that we do behind the scenes that people don't always see.
Yeah.
But really, he's right. Like, the companies all have made leaps and bounds. Like, you know, technology-wise, Bowtech came out with Deadlock and, like, really pushed the boundaries with that. But now you're seeing Matthews put limb shift, and Elite moves their limb pocket tilt things. And, like, companies came out with their version copying what Bowtech did. And so now you can buy similar technology, adjustment in a different way, but across the whole industry. And so, you know, you see that anytime someone comes out with something, the companies are like, oh man, we need a version or we're falling behind. And then they got to work around patents to make it happen. But everybody makes a good product now. They really do.
Yeah, and that's so similar. Like I said, we talked about it a little earlier, but I've always been a like motocross, supercross fan. And it's still so true. I mean, all of the motorcycle brands are top tier now. It's just like, I think in any space, there's not really clunkers anymore in like anything. You know, it doesn't matter what it is. Like all running shoes are like good now. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Where at a certain era, some probably were trash because like the development, they're trying to figure stuff out. When you take big leaps, sometimes it's like, it was a good idea, but it's not there yet. It's like nowadays all the ideas are so ironed out that it's kind of like adding to ideas every time. But 17 years, like how long ideally how long would you want to be a pro if you had to think about it? Like that's kind of a crazy one. Do you see yourself being a pro for 40 years?
So I always say, this is kind of an ongoing joke with the girls. I was like, yeah, you know, as soon as I'm like losing and I'm not winning at all anymore and whatever, like I'm done. And it's always like, when are you going to have kids, right? They ask me that too. I'm like, yeah, as soon as I'm losing and I'm, you know, not good anymore. And all the girls will be like, well, that's never going to happen. Like, you're going to be freaking 70 years old out here still finding a way to win. And I'm just like, thanks, I appreciate that. But it's kind of true. Like, as long as you're still relevant and you're still winning, well, I'll probably keep doing it. He was right, though. Like, when I was younger, the travel part of it was, like, amazing. I was like, this is so cool and so great. And yay, an airport. And yay, a new hotel and a new place. And new countries. And
airports. Or not airports. Well, you don't. You love airports and you love hotels.
I love the water hole at the airport. You know what I mean?
That,
now, that doesn't have the same allure. Like, now it's like, oh, I've got to go again. Like, it's already time. Like, can't I just have one weekend off? Like, as I've gotten older, it's transitioned more to that than like the excitement to go. And it's just hard. Like you said, during COVID, we got to do some normal people things. And I always worried, like, what am I going to do when I don't have archery anymore? And like, this sounds so pathetic, but like, I don't have a life outside of this. This has been my entire life since I was young. That's all I know. It's all I've done. Like, my whole thing is in this archery industry. So when I'm not a pro archer anymore, then who am I? And COVID kind of showed us that, like, oh, there is a life and it's actually not so bad, you know? Like, that's kind of nice. Like, we can go to the lake and, like, dinner with friends. And, like, I have friends here, like, my two best friends from here at home. We've been trying to do dinner with them for, like, probably 2 months now and just haven't even pulled that off. Scheduling's crazy. And so I love it. Like, I probably will keep doing it until I can't anymore. But it's different than it used to be, for sure. I wish I could stay home a little bit sometimes. Hunt more.
Traveling around it is wearing to travel all the time. Like, you know, to like, I don't know how many times we've been home for more than 8 days that's like the max. That's like a long stretch at home. And that is a lot, you know. So I get that, and especially when you're traveling so far for some of this stuff. Like you were talking about something in Chile.
And it's not just the travel, it's you have to do this and they expect you to be at your best every single weekend, all year long, year after year.
And sometimes it's like format to format to format too. So it's not like you just have one setup and you're going to shoot 3D is all. If that was it and there was enough circuit, like enough events in the circuit that you could just do that, it'd be great. But you're bouncing from indoors to outdoors to 3D to FIDA style tournaments to field style tournaments. Like there's so many different
site restrictions,
sites,
like different rules builds, between all the organizations. So it's everyone's always like, why are you always changing? And it's like, well, I'm one of the few that shoots basically every circuit that I can. And so I have to have so many different setups running at any given time, because you have to have a different one for each different thing. like he said, if I just specialized in one, it's easier. But here's why I don't. There's not enough money in it to just do that.
Yeah.
And so there's been years, I'll just use NFAA and USA Archery, that I always win the NFAA stuff. Like it was pretty good at that. I had a pretty big lead on all the girls for quite a few years. And I counted on winning the NFAAs, and the FIDAs were like, yeah, maybe. Well, I had a year that I didn't win like any of the NFAAs, or only won one or two. But I actually won a whole bunch of FIDAs. And so you never know. Like what I've found is when I do like the full circuits, I might have a hot year in ASA and not so good at FIDA, but the next year it could be totally opposite. If I just focused on the one and it was an off year, you're screwed.
Yeah.
And so I really kind of, like, people are like, why don't you
Risky.
pull back? Or don't you think it'd be better if you focused on one? I don't think I would shoot any better at any of those events if that's all I did. I'd be worse because there'd be more pressure because there's less events. So you have to perform because there isn't an event next weekend
then you're
and next
adding
weekend
a
and next
stress
weekend.
level to it.
Yeah.
That wasn't
So-
there as much before.
Yeah. There's not as many people who can go around and win at everything. Like that's hard. And it takes a lot of time and a lot of dedication. And 10 times more now, like I said, than it did 10 years ago.
Also, I did want to touch on the fact that everybody as adults' feet are touching the ground except the oldest person in the room. Are your backs all closed
Yeah.
like to the back?
I have no upper body. I'm built like Mike Wazowski.
Like
I have a lot of
I
legs,
just feel
but
like
no.
a little child down here, just
You
like
really are dangling.
la-di-da, they can't touch the ground, and that's not like
That's funny. Yeah, yours are
Yeah.
flat, right?
I'm
You
a-
got, you got your crayons in the coloring menu?
yeah, I do. I do
Yeah.
get those every time I go to the restaurant. It
booster
keeps me
seat. She
occupied.
needs the booster seat.
Classic.
Sometimes in my truck, I feel like I do need a booster seat. It's very frustrating. Like you crank that thing up as high as you can go, and like
Then you can't reach the
especially like
pedals.
climbing rocks and stuff when you take it out to trails to go hunting, and I could see like out over the top, but like it's like kind of we say it when you drive a ship, like your like distance that you can see is further dependent. There's a like
Yeah.
an equation for it. Is further the taller you are.
Yeah.
And so I'm like, in theory, it's the opposite for truck driving. Like James can see further, he's higher, so he can see
see
down in
closer
front
to
of
the
him.
front, yep.
Yeah, I cannot. So I'm like, James, you're gonna have to get out because I can't fucking see that rock right there. And it's like I can't see over the hood. There are times when I feel like I need a booster seat for driving. Yeah, but I
feel
was
ya.
saying, it is kind of cool that stuff has gotten so good technology wise that I think though it makes it more competitive for you as a shooter, it's almost kind of nice because like you're less relying on the equipment and you're more like relying on your talent and
Yeah.
how much you're like practicing and what your skill level is.
Yep.
So like you're going out there and you're competing with people based on their skill level, their knowledge and their talent, not based on like, oh shoot, I already know that bow shoots better than
Yeah.
mine or whatever.
Yes.
So it's kind of cool in that aspect because you're really looking at like, holy cow, they're talented.
It's good for
you
the
know?
industry. Like,
Yeah.
you know, people have options. I think that's good. One word we use in target archery more than we probably ever should is forgiveness. And
We heard that word a lot
yeah,
today.
yeah.
Yeah.
Like I use that word
I think
more
my
than
bow needs
anything.
more forgiveness.
Maybe not as much as like, but probably a close second. And with the different bows, some of them, depending on your shot style, it's like easier to find forgiveness or it's harder. And what I mean by that is your good shot should always hit. It's where do your bad ones hit? Do they still hit the dot? Are they an inch off? Are they 4 inches off? Like forgiveness is key, and that's so important in target archery. When you're hunting, anyone can step up and make one good shot. Now, if I told you, hey, go shoot 72 good arrows in the wind under pressure, it's a little bit different, right? Or shoot 90 that you can't miss in Vegas or whatever that is. And so for me, I really like to choose the equipment that I know I can get the most forgiving for myself. For somebody else, that may be different for them.
Tune that into which
Yes.
comes into like that knowledge and skill
Yes.
level portion.
On the
if you can
Bowtech,
do that
you-
better than somebody else can, and you have a bow that you can do more with to do that.
Yeah.
it's like
Makes
when
it
you
easier,
compare those two
quicker.
things together.
Yep.
Yeah,
The Bowtechs have so much you can do on them. You can make it feel like anything. So you can run a super aggressive cam with very short valley. You can run a long one with a
can you
deep valley.
hold it still?
I just can't. I was trying not to laugh.
My eye, and I was like, why is that around?
I feel like the mic gonna be a hit in the
I
comments.
think you should stay with this.
I think so too. I kind of like it. It's fun.
I think I actually have a higher heart rate right now because of it.
So, did you both shoot in Vegas? Did you shoot this year?
I wouldn't call it that. I
Yeah.
participated.
What did you put up? What What was your score?
I shot an 895.
Okay.
So a 98.
98, 99, 98. So, I mean, 298, 299, 298.
Oh, okay,
So,
okay.
I mean, been battling like a little bit like target panic stuff. So I was playing with the different release, and shooting a resistant style release in a very high pressure tournament is very unconducive to a good outcome. But
They're just not made good.
just
enough to be
working
that
through
level.
some things, and they're so sensitive to finger pressures and how you get your hand set in the release. And when you're shooting under that much pressure, there's a lot of things that happen versus what happens in practice. Like your body feels totally different. You may be pushing harder, you may be pulling harder, or you'll get a bout of nerves that just randomly hits. You could be going cruise control all the way through the middle of the round, start the day good, and then all of a sudden you'll just get 1 or 2 arrows for whatever reason that it just intensifies. And it's almost like, I mean, a couple years ago, I missed arrow number 90 in Vegas.
I watched
Like,
it and it was painful.
Out
So
of-
painful.
Out of all of the arrows I have
Ever missed.
screwed up or missed or whatever, like, that was the one that was like the hardest one to swallow.
Oh, I bet.
And honestly, ever since then, Vegas has been one of the hardest tournaments to shoot since that day. Like when I missed that arrow, because it's like,
It is all a mind game.
you want it so much worse now. And the more you want it, the harder it is to get there. And it's like, I just want like that self like validation. Like, yes,
can do
like
it.
I can still do it. You know, like I can still go shoot 900. I know I can shoot a 900. I've shot them before in Vegas. So it's not like I've never done it before. And it's like, I'm trying to get the monkey off my back. Like I've already been there, done that. I've shot them, but it's like trying to do it again now. And it's like the try hard factor is so much worse now than it used to be. So it's Vegas is rough every year just because, I mean, it's Vegas for one. And then always in the back of your mind, you're like, don't be that dipshit that misses
Well,
number 90.
Okay, the other thing is, let's
That's
loop
rough.
this back to hunting as well, because this is just archers in general. There's some people who just got it, and there's some people who just don't. Like we were watching you aim earlier, and like you aim probably better than both of us do. Naturally, like you're just very still.
archer's
You
not
either
like
are or you aren't, right?
Like baseball is one of those like natural born talent sports. Like you can be really, really good if you put a ton of effort into it, but you're never going to be one of the greats, right? Like the greats are just great because they have it
And they got and just as much work ethic.
and just as
like,
much work
Yeah, when
ethic.
you
Like you're not going to be
So-
a Barry Bonds or a Shohei Ohtani like with just work ethic. You got to be a
You gotta
mega
have
special.
a little bit of like that God-given talent to be able to like
Exactly.
actually
Yeah.
go exceed what seems humanly possible.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So in the archery space, and it's the same when you watch people hunt. Like there's people who are just supernatural and like pick a bow up, make it look easy. They don't need to practice a whole lot and they're pretty good. And there's people who need hours and hours and hundreds of arrows, like more than the other person to be the same. And so that's different. He's always been one who needs more practice.
I used to be like straight hot
More.
trash.
Yeah.
Like I had target panic so bad when I was a kid, and I literally quit shooting archery. Said, "Screw this, I'm done. All I want to do is hunt." And I didn't touch a bow other than a hunting bow for probably 7 or 8 years. And then I had a road construction job one summer, and I was working on the road, and I saw the bow launch come out, and it was, what bow was
Hoyt
it?
something.
It was the Hoyt Pro Comp in like 2013 or 2014. And I like saw the bow and I was like, man, that bow looks badass. And I don't know why or what, but I was like, I'm going to buy a bow. And I went and literally bought an entire like $4,000 setup just because I was like, man, that looked cool. Like it sparked my interest
Yeah.
to go like get back into it for whatever reason. And I just basically told myself when I went into it, like, I want to actually shoot good. I don't want to suck. So I started from basically scratch, relearned everything from what I had forgot, like kind of forgot the bad habits. Had been enough time. And then like I'd never shot a 300, even at like 10 yards on a Vegas face when I was a kid. And within probably 2 or 3 months of shooting, I shot the first 300 at 20 yards. And then like a month or two after that, I shot a 30X.
Yeah. Wow.
And it
That's
was
crazy.
like,
yeah.
wow, archery's really not that hard. Like everybody thinks archery is this crazy sport and it's so hard to do like when they're first getting into it. But realistically, archery's only as hard as you make it.
Yeah.
And
Dude, my buddy has such a funny statement about that because he's one of those guys that's very analytical, like shoots very much like only surprise breaks, and he's very good, right? Very good. But usually I'll beat him, right? And he goes, the thing is, you're too stupid to know how easy it is to miss, right? So you just go up and put it in there, and you don't think about it.
Yeah.
And I'm like, that is kind of an interesting, like, way to look at it. You know, I don't put a whole lot of thought into it. Granted, I didn't hit the middle every single time today, but like most of the time I can shoot pretty well, certainly above average, and it doesn't take a whole lot of thought.
Yeah.
You
Usually
know?
less is more.
Disconnect. Like,
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. What you
So archery, we say, is 90% mental, 10% physical. Like the mental game is, especially at our level with what we're doing, is like so important. And that's like you got it or you don't. You can work hard, you can put the time in, you can build your mental game up to get there. Some people just have it naturally and some people just don't. Like some have to work harder. And so, you know, there's probably, I don't even know, so many backyard pros is what we call them. People that shoot incredible, shoot super well, post the same scores we might in a tournament, but you take that same person, you put them in a tournament in front of thousands of people and ask them to do it, they're not going to do that.
Yeah.
So there's a big difference between shooting a bow good and shooting a bow good under pressure,
Yeah.
with sponsors carrying, with
sure.
media,
Yeah.
you know,
So many
crowds.
so many layers to add additional
Yeah.
types
That's the
of pressure.
mental difference.
Yeah.
Like there's some of the best archers in the world probably who don't make it just because they don't have the mental game to make it.
Yeah.
Like Josh, we have a friend, and his brother is a pro and incredible, and he was so good. His mental game just wasn't that good,
Mm-hmm.
but he shoots a bow incredible. And so, you know, again, that's different. Like you can hunt, you
Yeah.
can still kill stuff with nerves.
Yeah, oh,
Like
for
you can
sure,
kill,
yeah.
still, you know, succeed, but you can't really do that on our side if you can't get those nerves under control.
What would you say? This is obviously we're all just going to be guessing here, but you two have shot so many targets in indoor for so long. On like the Vegas face, if you took just an average 100 archers, maybe that have never done a shoot, just shoot for fun or hunt, they whip out the bow in November to shoot deer and then put it back away. Out of 100 people, how many do you think would hit inside the blue, like a scoring arrow 30 times in
We
a row?
talking bow hunters?
Any, yeah,
If you just
any.
took if you just took
Let's
an
just say-
average collective 100 people across
Yeah.
the board
How
of
many do you
various
think,
skill
correct.
levels,
How many do you think would put it inside of, let's say, the blue, the whole scoring
every
rings
arrow.
for all 30?
I think you would, at 20 yards, I think everybody would be able to do it.
What do you
If-
mean?
if you-
We've been at your parents' shop.
If
and
you
there's
took an
people that are
average of all the
terrible.
skill levels, from the worst of the worst to the best of the
Yeah.
best, and kind of just found a middle ground average between that, I feel like they would be able to keep it.
I think an
keep them all
average would
within
be
the
like
zone.
3 misses minimum because like a lot of those dudes,
So out of 100, you think, what, 70 people would be able to do it, average, or less? If we're just guessing.
I mean,
I
if they're
think-
hunters, I would
yeah.
hope they could
60
keep it in the
and
blue.
if
they're out
you
there
can't
trying to
keep
hunt
it in the
animals,
blue
like,
at 20
shoot
yards, you
animals.
shouldn't be hunting.
Now
I
how
feel
about
like, but-
how about inside the yellow for all 30? How many out of 100 do you think?
think that one
that's
not
where it
many.
Probably
significantly
20%.
drops off.
20%, you think?
Yeah.
Probably
20
close to
people.
that number.
Yeah.
Because like
You
what?
get- you have to think most like the big statement is always like as long as you can put it in a pie plate or
like
as long
we
as
said
you can
earlier.
put it
Yeah.
in a
Yeah, it's like that
dinner
old
plate.
Old paper
reference
plate
is, oh, if I can just hit a pie plate at 40 yards, like
And
you're
that's
good.
what
Like,
most people do. And
Yeah.
so like they just go down and they're like, oh, I'm pretty good. If they're just hitting inside that blue, basically within there, they're not missing the target, you know?
Mm-hmm.
But to condense that over half to just the yellow, you're gonna
I don't think there'd be
you're
that
gonna
many.
cut out over half
Yeah.
of those people.
I think the difference too, if you said can keep most of their arrows in there or 75% of their arrows in there, I would say the majority. But the difference is, and we've seen this with bow hunters at the shops, and I actually ran an archery shop in Chico for a while too, so I'm not unfamiliar to working in a shop. And you'll see people that are pretty good, and then like you had one earlier, like, oh, that was a bad shot. Okay, your bad shot was in the 9.
Yeah.
But a lot of people who aren't that good, their bad shots or flinches or whatever is a miss.
over there.
Yeah, it's way out. You know, like they'll be pretty good, and all of a sudden, wham, and they miss by 3 feet, and you're like, whoa.
Yeah.
Like it's minimizing those type bad shots that would make those people better in the field. Like that's where when you start doing the target stuff, I feel like you learn to work through a lot of that. So those misses are minimal compared to what they used to
Maybe
be
that would
before.
help me this hunting season.
Yeah, and I think just minimizing how much you miss by is so key. You know, like we talked about the term forgiveness that we threw around a lot, and how I always used to practice. Like I never shot faces like this till just when I got the target bow. So, but I always think a really good way to practice for your average bow hunter is to try to shoot as tight a group as possible and try to, like, if you're starting at the size of a softball, like maybe one day you can get to a golf ball, you know, and then push that distance out.
Yes.
I think that's such a good way for people to work on forgiveness and consistency.
Yep.
But I think 2 questions I want to tackle before we wrap up this pod is a couple hot button ones, one is heavy ass arrows for hunting. Are you guys a fan of the 600 plus
No.
grain single bevel broadhead?
No.
And if not, why?
Like maybe back in the day when bows were archaic and or
Less
maybe even-
efficient with energy.
Yeah, like it's the whole like FOC game and all this bullshit and everything people are trying to spew out now, and they're trying to reinvent the wheel. Like, dude, you're shooting a compound bow that's super efficient. Broadheads are insanely sharp. Arrows are way better than they used to be. Like the componentry, like everything that goes into building a high quality hunting arrow nowadays, you don't need this asinine amount of weight to go shoot a deer. Like you're not hunting a freaking Tyrannosaurus Rex, for God's sake. Like you're shooting a white-tailed deer. Like
20 yards.
20 yards out of a tree stand for the like that's what like the average bow hunter in America hunts
20
is
to
a
30
white-tailed deer,
yards,
20 to
white-tailed
30
deer.
yards. That's the most common animal hunted. Like you don't need some crazy ass setup to go shoot these animals. Like we were talking about it earlier, like my hunting arrow like is a little bit heavier, but I'm also shooting 75 pounds on performance. So it's like my arrow weight is not outside of the realm of what like spec should be, right? Like I always used to shoot an arrow.
What is your arrow weight?
It was like 440 grains, 450 grains, somewhere around there. Like it's just an average. Like if you took the average hunting arrow, it's probably 420 to 430 grains.
I shot, like I said,
And
420, 430.
I used to
forever.
always shoot like a 400 grain arrow ish because I would never run brass inserts. I always just ran the standard aluminum inserts. And then it kind of brass started getting a little bit more popular and everybody started talking about the FOC game and all this stuff and trying to calculate all your numbers. Like if you asked me what my front of center was, I couldn't even tell you within 5% of what my front of
We've
center
never
was.
calculated
Never
it, and
calculated
now
that at all.
I never will.
Yeah,
Just
Like,
because I
it's
will
the
not
most annoying
cave.
thing in the world and all this. Like you got to shoot a 900 grain arrow and it's got to be single bevel. Like for God's sake, Bomar's over there shooting water buffalo with an expandable in Africa. Like
Right.
No, Cape Buffalo.
or Cape buffalo in Africa.
That's
like,
bigger.
like you don't need all this crazy fancy stuff to go kill an animal.
Well, here's the other thing that just kills me. They focus on the wrong shit. Like, if you suck at archery and you get your 17% FOC or whatever the hell they want, like, that isn't going to help you kill animals. Like, not doing the flinches we were just talking about that make you miss the target or miss the blue or miss the yellow. Like, working on your form and your consistency and all of that stuff is 100 times more important than what grain arrow you have or what FOC you're running. Now, for specific key animals, buffalo, giraffe, things with way thicker hides, thicker rib bones, thicker things than what we have here in North America, then I get it. Like I've done special arrow builds for those animals because especially at my draw length and poundage, you have to be successful. That's different. But like any animal that I've hunted here in North America, I run a 395 grain arrow and I've killed anything you can probably think of with it except buffalo and a giraffe. Like most of the animals, the bigger ones on behind me on the wall, I shot with a 342 grain arrow. I did find that my penetration was a little better at 390. That's why I'm running 390. I tested 320, 340, 390, and 420. And my best penetration was the 390 to 400. I was pretty good at the 420, but my bow was slow enough I couldn't clear the distance I wanted for Western hunting. And so, like, I've shot, and it's not just like, oh, I hit it. Like, no, I'm zipping whitetail. Like, I'm shooting right through, you know? Like, for me, I don't care what grain I'm shooting. If I shoot an elk or a deer or whatever, like square in the shoulder, I'm probably not penetrating. So to me, shot placement is so much more important than my arrow build.
Facts.
100%.
Yeah, facts. That James harps on this one a lot.
I just do that to you.
When
Give me that
people, how do I say this politely?
Don't say it politely.
Yeah. When
These are
they're
hot button
talking about
topics.
arrow weight, and they're like, well, what about when you got to account for that bad shot? Like, don't you want to have the
No.
penetration to get through that shoulder? I'm like, well, fuckers, don't you want to more ethically kill that animal? Like, I experienced that, and I shouldn't have. I should have never said it. I did, and I jinxed myself, and I had the worst season I've had in my entire 12 years of hunting.
It happens.
It was. I joked because James had a rough year last year, and I was like, "Holy moly!" And I was like, I've never shot and not recovered an animal.
Yeah.
Never. This year, I made a shot, and it looked so good until he turned a little.
Yep.
In hunting, I say it's 90% skill, 10% luck.
Yes. Yeah.
Because
There's a lot
when
of
it
luck.
comes down to the wire, there's luck in there that like you just can't help it if those things happen or don't
If
happen.
they duck, if they whirl,
Yep.
there's things outside our control.
And we were in an area where I got to watch that animal cross a valley, come back up a mountain, run across that mountain. And I have never sobbed so hard in my life. I like, it hurt how bad I could see that animal was hurt.
Yeah.
And it was like, no, you shouldn't just want to have a heavier arrow so like I can blast through that shoulder and maybe he will, eventually die in like 8 hours painfully. Yeah. Absolutely not. Just make a better fucking shot. Like be a better shot. So
don't take shots outside of your comfort
Your skill
zone
level.
either.
Yeah,
Like,
your effective
yeah,
range.
if you
And
can't-
so
yeah.
that's just what it gets me a little hot and heavy when people claim that like, well, there are reasons for heavy arrows when you have instances like that when you make a bad shot.
Yeah.
And that to me is like the world's most asshole excuse you could ever make for running a heavy arrow.
Well,
Like, so you don't have to be a good shooter, as good of a shooter, because I run a heavy arrow so I can blast through more shit, It's like, well, what are you doing for that animal? Like, are you an ethical person at all?
Yeah.
I don't know. Like, I do get it with bigger animals.
Yeah.
1,000%. Like, we had to go through that game for the first time when I wasn't quite at as heavy a weight as I was now to shoot an elk, and was super nervous about that with a 24.5-inch draw.
Yeah.
Like, am I going to make it anywhere inside this animal to even, kill it? But for like your everyday animal, that's where it's like,
I'd say there's only about
I think-
3 animals on the entire planet, really, that you would need to build like a specifically heavy arrow for.
Yeah, I would
Yeah.
agree. And I mean, Josh and I just talked about it on the video we did, but like in all of my years bow hunting, shooting a lot of big game animals with a bow, and personally, and then seeing other people, usually a miss or a bad hit is because their arrow didn't get to the animal fast enough.
I was just
It's
gonna say
almost
that.
always animal reaction.
Yep.
Right? Or just a bad shot, but more often than not, the bad shot's caused by the animal reacting. So by shooting a heavier, slower arrow, especially beyond 40 yards, you're just making your chances of a poor hit higher, in my opinion.
You're
So,
giving the animal more time to react.
The thing that kills me is when I said I did that testing. Well, I'm like right on the cusp of like being okay to shoot an expandable, but maybe on a bigger animal I should shoot a fixed blade for penetration purposes. It's different when you start talking woman specs.
Of course.
24-inch draw length, 27-inch draw length, 50 pounds, 60 pounds. Like when you're on the cusp of the energy difference, like those are the people that should be discussing what arrow weight, what front of center, what build do I need, like speed versus ratio, versus arrow weight ratio. But here's where the fad is the problem. It's these dudes that shoot 80 pounds at a 29 to 30-inch draw length that are like, "Oh, you gotta have a 7-grain, 100-grain arrow for a whitetail." Like they could shoot anything that wouldn't blow their bow up at that spec.
Oh, yeah.
And like 5 grains per pound, and zip anything that they want to shoot through shoulders, whatever. So I think the issue that I have with that whole FOC like thing is it's the people who don't need to be worried about it are the ones that like are obsessed fanboys, and the people like us who actually need to be conscious of an arrow build, it almost like takes away from what we need to do to be successful, because they can be successful either way.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter.
I think it's a good point.
And I think it's just focusing on, specifically for women, when they get into these, like, gotta build a heavier arrow. It's like, you're taking away from, like, really thinking about what you should actually be doing to make it better, which is, like, for me, I can't change the length of my arms.
Yes.
So the only thing I can change is the speed of my bow. So how do I do that? I increase the poundage. It's like, well, if you want to, and then if you do want to run a heavier arrow, well, you're going to need to increase that poundage because otherwise you're just slowing that arrow down and you're slowing your shot down, which gives more time for the animal to react. So it's like, why bother with the heavy fucking arrow first? Like, build your poundage up first. And while you're doing that, learn to be a more accurate shooter first.
Yeah.
Then if you want to go build your fucking ridiculous,
Tyrannosaurus Rex.
Tyrannosaurus Rex
We always,
arrows,
that's our joke.
like Jurassic Park arrows, be my guest.
Yeah.
Go for it. I just think it's nuts. I do think as I get more and more into learning and hearing from people who like know more of the techie stuff, I think there is definitely importance behind it. I think the industry as a whole is looking for a way to like talk about some evolution
it goes
in
in
archery.
waves. Like you
there's
see it.
always.
Like, it's almost like it's like a wheel, right? Like there's 10 years ago, speed was king. Like there was all these bows, like
That's all
they
they
had
cared
turbo
about.
cams and super short brace heights and things like that, and they were just gnarly to draw back, and it was miserable.
Yeah, the old RPM 360, baby. Come
Yeah,
on.
like things like that. They're just crazy. They just were horrible to draw.
Oh,
But
yeah.
you got crazy fast speeds out of them. Now it's like everybody's like, well, I don't want that. I want something that's smooth, no
Consistent.
vibration, dead quiet, and they're not really caring about speed.
As
And
much.
it's like I think you're gonna see like the speed train come back into play here.
I think so,
in the next
yeah.
couple years.
I agree.
But it's like I've killed a bull elk almost every single year since I could start hunting elk. And I've shot more elk with a sub 400 grain arrow than I have a plus 400 grain arrow.
Yeah.
My arrow used to literally weigh 396 grains. I shot an Axis 400 cut to 26 and a half inches with 3 blazer vanes, a 100 grain broadhead, and a standard like 16 grain insert. And I've got more pass-throughs with that arrow on elk, anywhere from 15 to 60 yard shots, you know what I mean, than I have since I started shooting a 440 grain arrow, shooting an 80-pound bow.
Yeah.
So it's like,
Yeah.
it's all about shot placement.
Shot
and
placement's always gonna be the king.
situational animals. You could shoot the
Yep.
same animal with 15 different arrows and get 14 different results.
100%. Yeah,
So
100%.
I mean, it's so dependent on whether the animal reacts or flinches or tenses a muscle or something, how your arrow hits him, things like that. So
also,
it's-
like, especially because, the three of us run 2-blade expandables.
Mm-hmm.
It really matters a lot if you hit them horizontally or vertically. with
100%,
that.
yeah.
Big time.
And depending on where you hit, like
And
one way
where.
might have saved you, and the other way
Correct.
hurt you. Like,
Yeah, 100%. So yeah, I think that's a good take. All those takes on the heavy arrows are interesting. I mean, if I had to go shoot through a Volkswagen carburetor, I'd probably build the single bevel 1,000 grainer, But I'm not shooting through an engine block.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Most
one
of the time.
thing I want to point out that I think this fad has done poorly. I'm going to throw some dealers back east under the bus. Like out here on the West Coast, you will see we're shooting farther shots,
Yep.
right? Western style hunting. Everybody knows that.
Right.
Shops carry different spine arrows. They carry all the spines. You can walk in and find a 500 if that's what you need. You can walk in and find a 400. This heavy arrow fad has gotten so bad that back east, where people hunt whitetail because they're convinced they need heavy arrows, shops are ordering arrows in 250 and 300 spine, and they're not ordering anything weaker because it's light. And so you would walk in, or I would walk in, and they're going to say, "Oh no, just shoot this arrow." You're shooting arrows that are not spined for your bow properly. It's not going to be as forgiving. It's not going to be as accurate. At our speeds, again, the deer can react so much more as the arrow's getting there slower. And so I think the reason I'm against that, right, is like if you want to run a heavy arrow, that's fine. I'm not knocking you for doing that. But don't make it such a fad that like people are now
It's
using
right for
equipment
all.
that isn't actually correct for their bow to get such a heavy arrow, because forgiveness
Their
is
speed,
so
their
much more
draw
important
length, like-
than going from 400 to 500 grains.
Yeah, yeah.
Western hunting has become such a fantasy
I know it has.
over
Yeah,
the years.
it's been interesting.
Even more so in the past 5 years.
Yep.
And for North America, like the pinnacle is an elk.
Mm-hmm.
Like you hear about it, and from everybody back east and Midwest, like if you ask 95% of the bow hunters in America, like if you could have any hunt out west, what would you go do? Probably
Most-
90%
yeah.
of them are going to say elk.
100%.
And it's like, I look at, I mean, granted, elk is my favorite animal to hunt, but I grew up hunting elk.
Yep.
So it's a little different for me. Like I don't look at elk like they're some
You don't
unicorn
look at it like they're special
creature,
because
like.
you did it so much.
But that's like what I still
for
like.
you,
what,
that's more like hunting a whitetail for people. back
exactly
east.
like
Yeah.
like those guys
Which
eat,
I
breathe,
relate
and
to
sleep whitetail hunting, right? Like that's the same thing I fall into with elk hunting. But I also am not gonna go back east knowing I'm hunting a really flighty, fast moving animal, you know, at times, am I going to go build a 300 grain arrow so I have a 400 foot a second bow for it? No, like I'm going to use like my same normal build spec that's getting good solid performance and shooting good. I'm not going to completely change my entire setup to go hunt one specific animal.
Yeah.
My best
Where you
advice
guys back
for,
east do
for
that.
simple arrow builds. Forget FOC, forget any of that stuff. Pick your arrow. I don't even care what it is. Pick an Easton Axis. If you want a little bit heavier arrow, pick an FMJ or an FMJ Max. Like whatever it is. Pick the new 5.0 if you want a lighter arrow. Pick the arrow that you want. Cut it to the right length. Throw in any of the outserts, inserts, whatever that they have on the end. Fletch it up, knock, and throw a 100 grain broadhead on it. And that's probably where you should be if you're using the proper spined arrow. Yeah. Like I could go buy a 300 spine arrow that would give me way more weight or way more this, but I would way rather see people build the correct arrow spine for their setup so they have forgiveness than try to cheat the system to gain weight and then lose forgiveness.
Yeah. Yeah, I think it's important definitely to just not overcomplicate it and certainly not look at things as like a one size fits all.
Yeah.
And I think that's a bit of the slump with that strategy. Again, I think some places maybe there's validity, but probably not in most cases. And it's like it's being made to be like a blanket thing that's just true for everybody. The other one, I think this will be a good one to close on. I think this has been a good pod. I really do. It's been good. But my last one, okay, we talked about it a little in the video we filmed earlier. All of us know Mr. Joel Turner, right? All of us. I've shot with him. I've done videos with him. What are your thoughts on the shooting method that he teaches? Because, and he wouldn't say this, I don't believe. He didn't to me, at least. But a lot of people are taking that as a one-size-fits-all strategy, I would say. And again, I'm not saying Joel's saying that.
Yes.
But what do you guys think of that shooting style? And do you think it's a one-size-fits-all, or do you think it's kind of a situational thing for different people?
I think there's a lot of different, I mean, I know there's a lot of different guys out there that coach in various ways, right? I think the best advice I would give to someone who is would go into any one of the numerous coaches out there to go through like a week-long course or a weekend course or whatever it may be, right? Like you need to have the ability to compartmentalize different aspects and features that they teach, because just because this method works for one person does not mean the same exact method is going to work for 10 other people. So you need to be able to pick and choose things within each course that apply to yourself that you can actually comprehend, understand, figure out like, okay, yeah, can I do this repeatable, or can I make this work? Or, hey, I tried this one part of your coaching method and it gave me way more anxiety, or my aiming got way worse and I started punching the trigger worse, or whatever it may be, right? Like you just need to be able to look at each individual thing and be like, yes, this works, this works, this works. Those two things, I absolutely know it's not going to work for me, so I'm not even going to attempt it because I know it's probably going to make me worse.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I feel like there's a lot of that, but I mean, a lot of the stuff he teaches is good. It's just whether your brain is wired correctly to be able to implement exactly what he says into your entire shot process.
So, I'm stealing this from his finger now. Give me that. I agree with everything you just said. So to add to that, like I met Joel before Joel was Joel, right? Before Shot IQ was big, before Bodie started winning everything and everybody started looking at that. And I always had an issue where I would lock low on the target. And I would aim pretty consistently. I would just sight in and just aim there. Like my pin aim steadier there, worked for years. I did it for a lot of years. Joel hit me up out of the blue and was like, I think I can fix you. And I'm like, who's this fucking guy? Like, as if I haven't tried all these things under the sun, right? Like I've done every aiming drill and everything you could come up with, and I hadn't fixed it. And I won't give away a lot of his secrets, but the one thing that he did change in my shot process through that, because I heard him out, and I was like, yeah, if you think you can, I'll hear you out. Like I'm super open-minded to stuff. And again, it's not a one size fits all. Let me lead with that. Like, and neither is equipment, neither is form, neither is anything. So if there's a coach out there that is telling you this is the best way and the only way, fucking run. Like that's the worst person you could listen to. And so I was coming down, and I was shooting a thumb button, I think at the time, and I would come down and I'd wrap my thumb as I was still coming down to the target, and then I would just go past the middle, and then I couldn't get it back up. And so the one big thing that helped me, and I still use this from his shot process today, was I get the pin to the middle and I stop it. Then I put my thumb on the trigger, or then I roll to the click, or then I wrap my pointer finger. And taking that extra half second to a second to stop the pin in the middle and then wrap, my brain fought me less as far as aiming low. So that was the first time I'd ever worked with Joel. And some of what he said really, really resonated. Some of it didn't. So I just gave you one example that really worked for me. Now I want to give you one. Joel, don't hate me because I'm friends with them. But I'm honest, right? I'm going to give you the blunt thing. I watched a video that he posted the other day. Don't hate me, Joel. Just saying this again. And it was, please, it was, and he knows that I disagree with him on this. I've said it. But he posted a video with like a target and he was holding a lens.
Oh, the one with the thing and like.
And
Bowtech
he
did a
said,
very similar
like,
one, just like they did before.
here's like a nicer aim and whatever. And then here's the aim I would like you guys to see. And like, I looked at that and was like, like, please God, tell me people aren't going out and trying to make their bow aim like that. Like, in theory, what he's saying is true. And here's the difference. People believe that like wherever your pin is where it's going to hit. What he's saying as far as fast movement, you can bring it back to the center. Like the second your pin leaves the middle, your subconscious mind, not your conscious mind, is already bringing your pin back to the middle before your conscious mind realizes it's even left, right? That's automatic. You don't think about that once you've done it. And so what he's saying is with quick movement, it comes back quicker. He's not wrong. He also says that you don't have to have your pin in the middle when the bow fires to hit the middle. That is also true. I had so many arrows this weekend break like in the 9 ring that I got to the 10 and the X ring because they were coming back to the middle when they fired. So his point in what he's saying is true. But here's where I differ. Why, if I can make my bow aim better, aim slower, aim stiller, aim in a tighter aiming pattern, why would I not want that? Because that's obviously minimizing what the misses are going to be. Then I'm still implementing the same thing that I've always aimed the way that he's talking. Yeah, it moves and you just trust it and you pull and you aim and you hope it gets there if it breaks at the right time. And it will, and it can. But I would not tell people to go make their bow aim worse or take all your weight off and just let it aim horrible. And like what I try to explain.
If that were the case, then why didn't all target shooters just take all the weights and arms off their bows, you know?
The one thing too that he always says, and it is true, the more weight you put on the bow, the slower the aim gets. But for me, it's also the size of the aiming pattern. When I take a lot of the weight off on a Vegas face, I would literally move center 8 to center 8, any given direction. If I have to go shoot a 28x game to go win a tournament and my pin is in the 8 ring a lot of the time, I'm sorry, you're not gonna do that. Now, if I can add the weight and lessen the pattern to where it's mainly in the 10 with a little bit tweener 9, yeah, that's a little bit more achievable. So for me, the weight does slow it down, but it's more to help reduce that aiming pattern. And the other thing, I have my own mental thing that I have been attempting to finish for like 2 years and I just haven't because I'm so busy. It wouldn't contradict his. It could go in conjunction with it. But he's only teaching conscious. He's only teaching what you consciously think, what you consciously do, and all of this stuff. Like, our conscious mind is 10% of our brain. There's the other 90% that also is important that he doesn't talk about, really. And so I don't think that there is any one coach or one person who has all the answers or who knows everything. And we were talking about type A and type B, just aiming different. Like, this thing might really resonate with the type A brain and this thing might really resonate with type B, but like not cross over. And so what Tate said was perfect. It's, I don't live or die or swear by anybody. Like, if everyone just watched whatever I put out and then does it, I say all the time, like, don't just do what I do. Do the test and do what's best for you and yourself. I'll never tell you like this is the best way or the only way, because that would be wrong. But so take in all the knowledge. Like, take in this from Joel because this works for you, and this from someone else, and this from this pro archer, and this from this YouTuber. And if you can take that stuff and piece it together, you can be really fucking good. Yeah. But if you try so hard to force someone else's shot process, mental process, form, equipment build on you and it doesn't work, at the end of the day, that's hurting you more than if you probably just did it yourself.
It's like me going out and wanting to wear Shaq's basketball shoes. Like,
they don't fit.
They don't fit. It's the same thing. Like, people ask us all the time, like, well, how much weight do you run on your front bar versus your back bar?
I don't even want to tell them. I don't want to answer.
Well, I can give you like the ratio I run, but I'm not going to tell you like, hey, put 13 2/3 on your front and 17 1/2 on your back bar, because that's going to aim for you.
If I told people,
aim like hot trash.
yeah, I run 24 on the front and 42 on the back. Yeah, go try that. Like the average person who shoots their bow once every never, like they wouldn't even be able to hold that up. They would implode. And so I think coaching is important and it's necessary. And I think when everyone has their own style, as long as people can understand that there's different parts that will work for them and there's certain parts that won't, to be accepting of that. And I think from the coach's side, they also need to be respectful of that with the different archers, right? Like I have picked different pieces from different pro archers and different people along my archery journey that I've implemented into my own and turned it into something that works for me. And that would be my best advice is like, don't be afraid to test things. Don't be afraid to try things, but don't feel like that just because someone like Paige Pearce or Joel Turner tells you to do it, that you should do it and it should work for you. That's not the case.
So shop a la carte, not meal.
Yes.
Yeah. I think that makes
I
think that makes a lot of sense, because baseball's a great example. One pitching coach could go give Clayton Kershaw some advice on how to pitch, throw a better curveball, but it may not work from that guy. It's like their arms and bodies just work different. Whereas like he might get advice on how to throw a pitch from someone else that
and it just clicks.
Works better, know. It's not to say either of the teachers were bad or trash. It's just the information didn't work from that person to that person. Yes. I think that's key. But what a great pod. Yeah. Thank you guys for sitting down, having us up here. We did take forever to plan it, but that's what happens when you're doing a lot of cool, fun shit, But we'll do it again sometime. We got another day of filming. It's gonna be a lot of fun. So be sure to subscribe to Paige on YouTube, Instagram, and go get some wins. And Tate, sell the shit out of Bowtech. Let's go.
There we go.
Yo. Yeah. So that's it. Appreciate y'all. Bye.